in his position right
I'd
now.
like to see him walk away.
Would you?
I don't know his. Here's the thing. I remember my manager one time told me something. He said, "There's no such thing as extra money." So it's like, because some people say, "Oh, he made all that money." He's like, he can walk away. Yeah, there's no such thing as extra money. So you can always use more, right? I mean, that's one way to look at it. But are you going to wind up in a situation where you regret looking back? Also, there's the other side of it. There's the boxing, doing what's good for boxing side of it, which Canelo was not doing for a while, and that is keeping the titles hostage and not only keeping the titles hostage, but defending them against middle tier opposition while freezing out the top contenders in the weight class. That's not boxing. That's not sport. That's not good for the health of the business. And it's not good for the young talent to not be able to come up the way they.
After Crawford's shocking victory over Canelo, Paulie Malignaggi declared that it was time for the champion to step away at his peak, warning that chasing more glory could cost him everything. His comments highlighted boxing's eternal struggle between legacy, money, and the sport's toll on health. Even Crawford's close friend, Devin Haney, shared his view, saying, "I would love to see him retire. I think he accomplished everything in boxing." Haney's words felt less like advice and more like a heartfelt plea from someone who understands the grind, sacrifices, and dangers inherent in every extra round. This painted Crawford not only as a champion, but as a man standing at the edge of history, where one decision could preserve his legacy or put it at risk. The tension intensified as voices around him echoed the same truth. Perhaps this was the perfect moment to step away. Then Crawford himself spoke, hinting that this could be the closing chapter of his journey. His words carrying both the pride of a legend and the heavy weight of retirement hanging in the air.
Going up and becoming undisputed against Canelo. Whoo! Come on, man. I'm flying in the sunset, man. Thank you, boxing. I'm trying to make all-time history.
Right.
If the Canelo fight come to fruition, then that's a fight that I'll be willing to take just off the wrist. To be one of the all-time greats.
It was the voice of a man who had conquered every peak the sport could offer. There was no boastfulness, just a quiet confidence that his legacy was secure, whether he chose to continue or walk away. Yet beneath that calm, the tension between retiring and chasing one more moment of glory was palpable, giving his words an almost haunting weight and leaving fans anxious about what lies ahead. In that moment, Crawford wasn't just speaking about boxing. He was reflecting on the delicate balance between triumph and farewell. Chris Algieri also voiced his wish for Crawford to retire at his peak, framing his opinion with a poignant reminder drawn from boxing's storied past.
Champ, I would love to see him walk away and finish a career perfect at its height. Kind of the way that I wish Roy Jones had done after he had beaten John Ruiz. He jumped up to the heavyweight division, became heavyweight champion of the world. At that point, it's like, what else is there to do? And he chose to go back down to light heavyweight, fight the number one contender and who's been there for a long time, Antonio Tarver, who's a super dangerous guy. And he ended up winning that fight too. He could have stopped there. It wasn't a great performance, but he could have stopped there, and he would have been minted as GOAT status. But he kept going, and he kept going, and he kept.
Algieri's words carried the weight of history, highlighting the perils of chasing more once perfection has already been achieved. His reflection came across as a cautionary tale, drawing parallels to another legend who could have walked away unscathed but chose to continue. For Crawford, the message was clear and sobering. Your legacy is already secured. Don't risk tarnishing it. Algieri wasn't offering criticism. He was pleading, urging the champion to recognize that sometimes the toughest battle is knowing when to step away. Later, Algieri reinforced his stance, this time grounding his argument in the harsh realities of boxing.
Part of me wishes that he did stop then, because then we're talking about GOAT status, which is where Crawford is right now. But that money's real, man. That's a lot of money. And saying that he made, 10, maybe 20 million in this fight against Canelo. Canelo made 150. So can you just leave that money on the table? I don't know many guys who would. I don't know many guys that have. And I obviously he's still got a lot left to him, but I don't see him campaigning at 168. I think he gets rid of those titles for more than a couple reasons. One reason is he's just not that weight. And I believe that it was a calculated risk going up 2 weight classes and fighting Canelo, because he's a smaller guy. Canelo's 2 inches shorter than me. Canelo has a 4-inch discrepancy in reach. He's got slow feet. There was a lot of things that Canelo presented, even at 68, that Crawford saw where he was going to be better than him at, and he could take advantage of. And he did. We saw that all night long in all 12 rounds.
Algier, I shifted his focus to the money, the weight, and the calculated risk Crawford had just taken. While he acknowledged the brilliance of Crawford's performance, beneath it all lay a concern that pushing further could bring more danger than reward. He stripped away the glamour, exposing the lure of millions and the temptation to continue even when there's nothing left to prove. His analysis was clear. Crawford had managed the risk perfectly against Canelo, but repeating it could be costly. To Algieri, retiring now wasn't just wise, it was the only way to preserve greatness permanently. Then came the voice of a legend, Roy Jones Jr., offering his perspective on Crawford's potential retirement. Few understand the cost of staying too long better than him, which made his words hit even harder. Roy's statement, simple and pointed, felt like advice from one fighter to another. When you've reached the absolute peak, sometimes stepping away is the perfect ending. There was no lecture, only the sharp truth, carrying both respect and caution. Hearing it from Roy, a man who had lived through both glory and the dangers of overextending, made the message even more powerful, a passing of wisdom from one legend to the next. Finally, Paulie Malignaggi turned his attention to the politics surrounding Crawford's future, highlighting the double standards that dictate who gets pushed toward certain fights. It was another reason, he argued, why Crawford should consider retiring at the top of his game.
Conversations where all of a sudden Turki Al-Sheikh now is pushing the Benavidez fight on Crawford. Dude, why didn't you push the Benavidez fight on Canelo? Like, what's with that? If you're the guy, be the guy. Why is he walking on eggshells with Canelo? Like, he had Canelo. He was just so happy, like a bit of a groupie, I gotta say. Like, he had Canelo. He wasn't pushing a Benavidez fight on Canelo. But all of a sudden, Crawford wins the title. I'm gonna push the fight. I'm gonna push the Benavidez fight right away.
His words carried a note of frustration, highlighting how Crawford was facing pressures that Canelo never had to endure. It wasn't just about matchups, it was about respect, and how quickly public perception can shift when a new king emerges. Malignaggi's stance hinted at a deeper reality. Sometimes the sport demands more from one fighter than another. Beneath it all, his message circled back to retirement, warning that the wrong push could drag Crawford into perilous territory. The tone was unmistakable. Stepping away might protect him from becoming another pawn in boxing's political game. He went on to emphasize the weight factor, explaining what remaining at 168 could truly mean for Crawford's future.
And Crawford not fighting Benavidez because Crawford is so much smaller. It's like when Pernell Whitaker beat Julio Cesar Vasquez. He won the title at 154, but then he vacated and went back down. I think that's the right thing to do. I think you vacate the titles at 168. If you want to fight, you fight at a lower weight classes, whatever, and you allow the weight class to breathe. And you're still that name, that huge name recognition, and you're still that guy who can, either pursue other championships and back in your lower weight classes, or you can, do a bit of a retirement tour, whatever. Same thing I was saying that Canelo should have done instead of holding the titles hostage. If you stay at 168 and you defend at 168 and you start defending against middle tier guys, you've just continued the Canelo game plan, which is just to freeze out the best.
Paulie's words underscored the reality. Crawford was naturally smaller, and 168 pounds was never truly his home. In his view, the wiser move was to relinquish those belts, avoid getting trapped, and step away on his own terms. He painted a vivid picture staying could lead to repeating the mistakes Canelo made, sidelining genuine contenders while diminishing the sport itself. At its core, his tone was protective, urging Crawford not to gamble with his health or his legacy. Retirement, he suggested, would preserve everything he had already achieved, leaving his record spotless. Paulie didn't stop there. He then turned his attention to the new wave of talent, rising at super middleweight and what that could mean for Crawford's future.
This weight class is starting to come onto a new generation of top Walton super middleweights. We've got Lester Martinez. We've got Pacheco,
well.
And Bealey's still there. You've got guys at 160. You already put the old regime, you pushed them out at 175, like Benavidez and Morrell. Even Morrell, Bob Sanders was here the other day, said maybe Morrell could come back down to 168 if the title's open. I'd like that to happen just for the sake of boxing. I get where one would think, Crawford could defend that 168 and do all this stuff. But if you're going to do what Canelo was doing, then, there's no difference. It's the same complaint. I think Crawford's place is at a very firm hold where he is. If he retires now, he's in a untouchable state. But I understand where there's no such thing as extra money. But just don't hold the titles hostage, dude. Don't do what Canelo.
His words carried both caution and respect. He recognized the young lions ready to make their mark and emphasized that Crawford had nothing left to prove against them. The message was clear. Don't let history repeat itself by holding the division hostage. For Paulie, the only way to safeguard Crawford's untouchable legacy was to step away now. before the next generation pulled him into unnecessary battles. It wasn't fear, it was the wisdom of years spent watching legends fall too late. He brought the point back to Canelo, making a blunt comparison that underscored just how urgent Crawford's decision had become.
Bro, but I keep telling you, Canelo wasn't that good. Canelo was fighting low-level, mediocre opposition to keep himself at a level where he didn't belong anymore. Canelo wasn't
matter,
there,
dude.
So
you know fighters. If you feel that good against a guy,
and that's not to take away from Crawford's accomplishment, because Crawford, he does what he's supposed to do. Hey, that's the champ. I'm going to take out the champ. Well, from the other side of it, it's still Crawford's got to keep in mind he's 38, and you'll be putting. Granted, again, there's enough money, everybody has a price, but you'll be putting this huge accomplishment at risk. Now you're going to be facing guys who are at that level and are battle tested at the high level. Canelo wasn't testing himself at the high level.
And hungry
for a while.
He stripped away the glamour, pointing out that Canelo's run had often been padded with lesser opposition. Paulie warned that the real danger for Crawford would come if he chose to stay and face the truly battle-tested elite still waiting in line. Every word emphasized the risks, age, competition, and the possibility of tarnishing a legacy that had just been cemented. He wasn't diminishing Crawford's achievement, he was protecting it, urging him to see that the fight outside the ring was now greater than any inside it. In this light, retirement wasn't defeat, it was the ultimate victory. Finally, Crawford himself addressed the retirement speculation, leaving fans hanging on every word. His response was neither a promise nor a denial, but the voice of a man caught in the middle. I don't know if this is the last fight of my career. I've got to sit down with my team and we'll talk about it. His words blended uncertainty with control, showing that he wasn't rushing a decision and fully understood the gravity of the moment. Every choice from here would echo through history. The hesitation didn't signal weakness. It reflected a champion carefully weighing legacy against temptation. Fans could feel the crossroads: retire now and remain untouchable, or step back in and risk everything he had built. Crawford added another reflection that deepened the mystery. I'm just saying it could be, it may not be. I don't want to say that it is. I don't want to say that it ain't. And then it is. In those words, Crawford appeared most human and certain, thoughtful, and brutally honest about the pull of both paths. The indecision itself became part of the drama, leaving everyone guessing whether they had just witnessed his final masterpiece. Each line revealed the struggle between heart and mind, between walking away clean or chasing one last thrill, a rare glimpse into the vulnerability of a fighter who always seemed unshakable in the ring. Eddie Hearn then stepped in with his trademark bluntness. Weighing the retirement debate against what more Crawford could still achieve, his take struck a balance between respecting a perfect exit and acknowledging the lure of making even greater history.